"Move along! You're in the wrong seat!" Lauren Price's cold voice sliced through the tense air of the first-class cabin like a knife. Her arm shot out, blocking the aisle. In front of her stood a composed black woman, holding a boarding pass that clearly read, "Seat 2A, First Class." That woman, Dr. Naomi Carter, 40, 2 years old, CEO of an aviation finance conglomerate, merely raised an eyebrow. But Lauren didn't look at the ticket. She looked directly at Naomi, as if this woman had trespassed into forbidden territory. Behind her, Thomas Whitaker, a white businessman, in his mid-40s with a Rolex gleaming under the cabin lights, stood smugly. He smirked, voice dripping arrogance. "That's my seat. I paid full price for it." In that instant, the cabin held its breath. Other passengers froze. A few heads turned, eyes darting with curiosity and judgment. Silence thickened, broken only by the low hum of the air conditioning and the clatter of luggage wheels from the economy section behind the curtain. Naomi did not lash out. She did not shove Lauren's arm aside or argue with Thomas. Instead, a faint smile crossed her lips. From her handbag, she pulled out a business card and placed it calmly on the nearest tray table. The embossed silver letters gleamed under the cabin lights. Naomi Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Aviation Holdings. No one breathed. In those few heartbeats, Lauren and Thomas could not yet grasp that their careers were teetering at the edge of a cliff. Aaron Cole, a 38-year-old travel journalist, seated in premium economy just behind the curtain, had been hoping for a quiet flight to finish his article. But from his seat, he could see everything: the gestures, the looks. His instincts screamed that this was more than a trivial squabble. This was a story about power, prejudice, and justice. The scene mirrored countless others he had witnessed. Black passengers, scrutinized more harshly. Women underestimated. The unspoken hierarchy of who belongs and who doesn't, carved by someone else's gaze. Naomi stood with a calm that unsettled the air itself. Her navy suit, tailored to perfection, framed her tall frame. Her natural hair was tied neatly in a bun, no extravagant accessories. She had nothing to prove, yet her simplicity became fuel for doubt. Did she truly belong here? Lauren arched an eyebrow, projecting her words for all to hear. "You're in the wrong cabin. Premium economy is behind you." The word premium dropped heavy, as if to say, first class is for those who deserve it. Naomi slowly extended her boarding pass. "Seat 2A, first class." Her voice was steady, not a trace of apology, but not raised in anger. It was the voice of someone used to making billion-dollar decisions, now being treated like an intruder. Lauren grabbed the ticket, flipping it over, narrowing her eyes as though she could spot a forgery in the ink. "This doesn't look right. That seat is reserved for full-paying passengers." Thomas snorted, seizing the chance to sneer. "Exactly. I paid full price. Not everyone can." A few glances flickered toward Naomi, some curious, some doubtful. In seat across the aisle, Evelyn Grant, 72, a retired law professor, gripped her cane with knuckles white. Her sharp eyes burned with quiet fury. She had witnessed a lifetime of injustice and knew instantly this was not about a seat, but about dignity itself. The cabin air thickened. Naomi stood firm. Lauren called out, Rachel, come here. We have a situation. Rachel Matthews, 38, the lead supervisor, approached with the practiced neutrality of years on the job. Yet before hearing a word, her eyes betrayed an instant bias siding with Lauren. What's going on? Lauren jerked her chin toward Naomi. This passenger is trying to sit in first class with what looks like a suspicious ticket. Rachel didn't call Naomi by name. She didn't say she. She said, "This passenger." The distance in those words cut deeper than a blade. Naomi stayed silent, but Aaron's fingers were already flying across his laptop keys. He knew a storm was coming. When Jordan Pierce, a 34-year-old security officer, arrived, the tension in the cabin reached a breaking point. He carefully inspected the boarding pass and ID. Every detail was flawless. He leaned toward Rachel, voice low. "Ma'am, everything is valid. Seat 2A belongs to Ms. Carter." Rachel's face stiffened. "Final decisions rest with the crew. It's about flight safety." Naomi lifted her chin, eyes blazing at the flimsy excuse. "Flight safety? Because I'm sitting in the seat I paid for." Her words, calm yet piercing, silenced the entire cabin. Evelyn tapped her cane against the floor, the sharp clack echoing like a gavel strike. "Nonsense. I've flown for 60 years. This is discrimination, plain and simple." A wave rippled through the passengers. Some pretended to look at their phones, others whispered to neighbors. But no one could deny what they had just witnessed. Blatant prejudice in plain sight. Naomi glanced at her watch, drew in a steady breath, then smiled faintly as though she had reached a decision. "I want to speak with the captain." Paul Bennett, the ground supervisor, stepped forward, voice uneasy. "The captain is preparing for takeoff. We can't." Naomi cut him off, her tone quiet but unyielding. "I think this time you'll want to call the captain immediately." In that moment, no one on board could have known that within minutes, the balance of power on this flight would be overturned completely. The air in the first-class cabin was as heavy as a storm on the verge of breaking. Passengers who had sat silently began to lift their heads, their eyes wavering between curiosity and unease. They sensed that what was unfolding was not a simple seat dispute, but the unveiling of a much deeper fracture in the walls of power and prejudice. Jordan Pierce, the young security officer, still stood beside Naomi. He felt the conflict pounding in his chest. On one side, orders from superiors. On the other, the undeniable truth of the boarding pass he had just checked. His years on the job had taught him to follow protocol. But the calm face and steady eyes of Naomi made it impossible to turn away. Rachel Matthews, the supervisor, adjusted the lapel of her uniform, her voice firm. "We need to resolve this immediately to avoid delays. If the passenger does not cooperate, we will be forced to remove her from the flight." Naomi lifted her head, her dark eyes glowing with determination. She did not shout, did not argue, but answered calmly, "You may do that, but before making such a decision, call the captain. I want to hear the judgment of the person with the highest responsibility here." That composure sent chills through those nearby. She was not resisting with rage, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew she stood on solid ground. Across the aisle, Evelyn Grant pressed her lips together, her hand trembling on her cane, though her eyes remained sharp. She had lived through the civil rights movement. had watched friends march for justice. She recognized that this moment was not so different, except the stage was now a suffocating first-class cabin, and the audience was not just a few dozen passengers, but possibly hundreds or thousands watching through the glow of phones. Indeed, just a few rows back, 27-year-old Sofia Alvarez quietly raised her phone. The screen blinked with the word "live." At first, only a few dozen tuned in, then the numbers began to climb. Comments scrolled across. "What's going on? This is blatant discrimination." With each passing second, the cabin carried not only the passengers inside, but the invisible weight of an online community outside. Thomas Whitaker, who had arrogantly claimed, "That's my seat," grew impatient. He thrust his paper ticket into the air, his voice sharp. "I don't have time for this. I have a meeting in New York. The captain needs to know that I paid full price, while she clearly—" He left the words hanging, but the contempt in his eyes finished the sentence. Naomi turned slightly, facing him directly. There was no anger, only a faint smile at her lips. "Mr. Whitaker, soon enough we will all know who truly paid for this seat and for this plane." Her words struck like a spark tossed into a closed cabin, causing a few heads to snap up. Paul Bennett, the ground supervisor, stepped in. His forehead glistened with sweat, his eyes avoiding Naomi and the crowd alike. His voice was firm, but trembled beneath the surface. "Passengers, please remain calm. We will resolve this at the gate. Ms. Carter, please follow me outside." Naomi glanced at her watch, then swept her gaze around the cabin. Faces filled with curiosity, caution, a few with sympathy, and here and there, quiet solidarity. She knew this was the pivotal moment, either retreat silently or stand firm and force the truth to surface. She nodded slightly, her voice low but resonant across the cabin. "If you insist, then call the captain, because this is not just about a seat. This is about the dignity of this entire airline." Aaron Cole felt a current shoot down his spine. He had witnessed hundreds of arguments on flights, but never a woman facing injustice with such measured calm. In her eyes, there was no impulsive defiance but strategy. It was as though she had entered this confrontation long before, waiting for the moment her opponents would expose themselves. The silence in the cabin stretched tight as a violin string. Every glance, every breath awaited the next strike of the gavel. Lauren, Rachel, Paul. Each of the 3 crew members began to realize they were no longer in control. Under the harsh white light of the cabin, the masks of authority were beginning to crack. And in the very center of the storm, Naomi Carter stood tall, like an unshakable pillar. In just a few minutes, everyone would know that the woman they tried to humiliate was not the weaker party, but the hand holding the fate of the entire crew. The cabin tilted in tense silence. No one spoke, but everyone could feel it. One more step, and the truth would explode. Jordan Pierce, the security officer, drew in a deep breath. He looked at the boarding pass one last time. Seat 2A. First class, printed clearly, the barcode matching perfectly. He whispered, "This ticket is valid. I confirm." A small drop, but one that fell into an already unsettled pond. Rachel Matthews frowned, clinging desperately to authority, slipping him through her fingers. The final decision belongs to the crew. For the safety of this flight, we... Naomi turned, her eyes flashing with cold light. Flight safety? Then tell me, what danger is there in a woman sitting in the seat she paid for? The question, sharp as a blade, left no answer. From her corner seat, Evelyn Grant suddenly struck her cane against the floor, the sound echoing like a judge's gavel. Her voice, raspy yet thunderous, filled the cabin. Nonsense! I have flown for over 60 years. And I know very well this is not about safety. This is discrimination. Her words split the air like lightning, startling many passengers. Some turned away, pretending not to be involved, but others began to nod. A young couple on their honeymoon exchanged grave looks. A student whispered, "This is insane." First class, usually a haven of quiet luxury, had transformed into a discreet courtroom with Naomi at its center. Meanwhile, Sofia Alvarez's phone buzzed in her hand. Her live stream had crossed 200 viewers. Comments flooded in. What airline is this? Don't let them kick her out. It's 2025 and this is still happening. Sofia's heart raced. She knew with each passing second, this story was escaping the cabin and reaching the world. Thomas Whitaker still stood there, face flushed red. He jerked his chin toward Naomi, his voice sharp with irritation. This is a waste of time. She clearly doesn't belong here. I have $1 million meeting in New York, and I'm not wasting my time on this nonsense. Naomi looked at him, her eyes impossibly calm. Then in a voice soft as a breeze, but loud enough for all to hear, she said, "Mr. Whitaker, perhaps you should reconsider. Because this seat, this plane, even this crew belong to me far more than you realize." A few eyes widened. Some people held their breath. One hint, one spark. Paul Bennett, the ground supervisor, stepped forward nervously, fiddling with his radio. His voice quivered with urgency, almost pleading. "Ms. Carter, please step outside. We'll resolve this at the gate, without disrupting the flight." Naomi glanced at her watch. Her expression remained unchanged, but her eyes blazed with resolve. She shook her head slowly. "I paid for this seat. I have the right to sit here, and I will not leave unless the captain himself asks me directly." The words locked the tension in the cabin tighter, as though it could be sliced with a knife. Aaron Cole, the travel journalist behind the curtain, felt sweat bead across his palms. He had never seen a passenger hold ground like this. She was not shouting. She was not begging. She was commanding the situation with unnerving composure. This was not a petty clash, he thought. This was a chess match, and she was waiting to play her ace. Jordan leaned toward Rachel, his voice low but steady. "Ms. Matthews, I cannot file a false report. The ticket is valid. The ID is valid. I checked it myself." Rachel faltered, her ears burning red. Lauren Price gripped the boarding pass, her voice laced with venom. "Anyone could print this at home. You're not fooling me." Naomi turned, her lips curving into a faint smile. That smile rippled through the cabin, not the smile of the powerless, but of someone who knew she held the entire board in her hands. She slipped a hand into her coat pocket, drew out a sleek silver card, and set it gently on the table beside the seat. The embossed letters gleamed under the cabin lights. Naomi Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Aviation Holdings. First class fell into silence. Paul Bennett's eyes widened. Rachel swallowed hard. Lauren staggered half a step back, as though struck by an unseen current. Thomas Whitaker, still oblivious to the earthquake beneath his feet, barked, "What are you waiting for? That seat is mine!" But the others understood. The moment of revelation had arrived. The woman they had dismissed, the one they tried to force to the back, was in fact the one with the true power to decide the fate of the entire airline. From the row behind, Aaron Cole sat frozen. He knew the travel piece he had been drafting had just transformed into an epic. And in that heavy silence, everyone understood. The battle for power had just begun. The cabin felt frozen in time. The silver business card gleamed under the lights, embossed letters daring every skeptical gaze. Naomi Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Aviation Holdings. Paul Bennett stood stunned, the radio in his hand suddenly heavy. He blinked rapidly, as if unable to believe that the woman stopped just minutes earlier was in fact the CEO of the corporation, leasing dozens of aircraft to this airline. Rachel Matthews tried to maintain composure, but the corner of her mouth twitched and her eyes darted. Lauren Price stepped back half a pace, her grip on the boarding pass loosening unconsciously. Only Thomas Whitaker remained defiant. His face twisted as he barked, "So what does that mean? I'm still a paying customer. That's still my seat." Yet his voice had lost its earlier sharp arrogance, replaced by unease, the tone of a man who hadn't yet realized the ground beneath him was splitting apart. Naomi unlocked her phone with a swift motion, the screen lighting up with a PDF document. She tilted it toward them, her voice steady and deliberate, each word striking like a hammer. "This is the current leasing contract between Meridian and SkyWest. We finance or own 37 aircraft, including the plane we are on. Tail number N7392B, listed on page 3. She scrolled down, lines of registration numbers glowing on the display. Paul leaned in, his hand trembling as he matched them. The truth cut like a blade. The cabin erupted in a suffocating silence, half shock, half silent admiration. A few passengers gasped. Murmurs spread like wildfire through dry grass. Aaron Cole, the journalist, felt his heart leap. He could hardly believe his luck. An undercover CEO, humiliated on an aircraft she financed, now revealing her trump card before an entire cabin of witnesses. This was no longer just a travel column. This was a media earthquake. Evelyn Grant sat upright, her aged eyes flashing with renewed fire. She nodded, whispering to herself, "Justice. Sometimes it arrives in the calmest form." Rachel inhaled sharply, clinging to the last scraps of authority. "This is an operational matter. Cabin control belongs to us. If you wish to complain, you can file a report with the company." Naomi smiled, not mockingly, but with the confidence of someone who had already seen every move on the board. "A complaint? I have it ready. And under the airline's own policies, every incident of discrimination must be recorded and archived. I want a report filed here and now, with names, times, statements, and witnesses." Jordan Pierce, silent until now, gave a firm nod. He opened his work tablet, launching the incident form. His voice was deep and resolute. "I will file the report. This is mandatory procedure." His words sliced through Rachel's fragile resistance. Sofia Alvarez, her phone still raised, widened her eyes as the viewer count surged past 500. Comments poured in. "That's really the CEO." They picked the wrong woman to mess with. The media needs this footage. She lifted her phone higher, framing Naomi standing tall, her gaze steady amid the chaos. An image that felt symbolic, justice being live-streamed for the world to witness. Thomas, finally sensing the unraveling, muttered weakly, I was told the seat was open. How was I supposed to know?" Evelyn leaned forward, her tired eyes burning with disdain. "By looking at your own ticket, or simply by showing the most basic decency." Thomas lowered his head, words failing him. Naomi lifted her chin and locked eyes with Rachel. Her voice was low, steady, unyielding. "This is no longer an operational issue. This is a civil rights violation. And it has been recorded, live-streamed, with hundreds of witnesses in this cabin." The plane fell utterly silent. No coughs, no whispers. Only the weight of truth hanging heavy and undeniable. In Aaron's mind, sentences arranged themselves. When truth is blocked at the doorway, sometimes it must force open its own path. And today, on this flight, truth had walked out, unflinching. In that moment, everyone understood. Naomi Carter was no longer just a passenger. She was the arbiter of the game. And from here, the balance of power in the cabin had shifted. The first-class cabin had become a courtroom. Every passenger was a silent witness, and every gaze fixed on the black woman who had just revealed her true identity. Naomi Carter stood tall, her business card still gleaming on seat 2A. Without a wasted motion, she radiated an authority that needed no shouting, an authority born from unwavering faith in truth. Rachel Matthews clung desperately to the last shred of power, her voice sharp but trembling. We hold supreme authority over flight operations. If you continue to disrupt, we will have to report this as a security violation." Naomi turned, her eyes locking onto Rachel's, stripping away every layer of excuse. "Report it, but make sure you include this. A first-class passenger with a valid boarding pass was blocked because of her skin color. And add this too. The incident is being live-streamed to thousands of viewers right now." The word struck like a hammer, leaving Rachel speechless. Jordan Pierce, the security officer, was already typing into his tablet. Each tap marked another piece of irrefutable evidence. His voice was firm. "The incident report is being created. Every word and action from staff and passengers involved will be recorded." Paul Bennett stepped back, sweat beading on his temple. What he thought was a simple case of a passenger in the wrong seat had turned into a ticking media bomb. In the row behind, Sofia Alvarez could barely believe her eyes. Her live stream had passed 1,000 viewers. Comments poured in. "Which airline is this? Send the link to the press. A CEO discriminated against on a plane her company finances? This is going to explode." Sofia bit her lip, still holding her phone steady, outrage mixing with awe. She knew this moment would change perspectives far beyond the cabin. Thomas Whitaker, the man flaunting his Rolex and bragging about paying full fare, now stumbled back, his voice faltering. I was just told the seat was open. I didn't know." Evelyn Grant let out a sharp breath, her voice cold as steel. "Didn't know? A grown man who cannot read a boarding pass, or simply didn't want to know because you believed you were more important?" Thomas dropped his head, his pride shattered into fragments. Naomi turned away from him and faced Paul Bennett, her voice slow, but each word forged in steel. "I want to see the captain, right now." Paul stammered. "But the captain is preparing for departure. We can't," Naomi cut in, her tone for the first time edged with ice. "You will want to call him. I guarantee it." Paul froze, as though his throat had closed, then spun around and fumbled for his radio. Moments later, the cockpit door opened. Captain Richard Hayes stepped out, 57 years old, hair salt and pepper, eyes seasoned by tens of thousands of flight hours. The atmosphere shifted instantly around him, the natural gravity of a man responsible for hundreds of lives. "What is going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but weighty. Paul handed him the business card with shaking fingers. Richard glanced down, then looked up, his eyes widening slightly in recognition. He turned to Naomi. "Dr. Carter." The greeting sent a ripple through the cabin. It was more than courtesy. It was acknowledgement, confirmation that this woman truly held a place of significance. Richard extended his hand. "I apologize for the mistake. Your seat is entirely valid. I want to know, what can we do to make this right?" The cabin was silent. Evelyn nodded slowly, eyes alight with satisfaction. Sophia adjusted her phone, capturing it all. A black woman receiving belated respect that overturned the entire balance of power in the cabin. Naomi did not shake his hand. She shook her head gently, her voice calm yet resonant. "What I need is not a private apology. I need transparency. Everything that has happened must be documented, publicly, so no one can ever do this to another passenger again." Her words landed like nails driven into wood. Sharp, uncompromising. Aaron Cole, in the row behind, felt the pen tremble in his hand. He knew he had just witnessed history, a moment when someone dismissed and humiliated had, within minutes, forced an entire system to face the truth. In Naomi Carter's eyes, he saw not only the sting of insult, but also a vision beyond it, the resolve to turn pain into the lever of industry-wide change. And Aaron thought to himself, this is only the beginning. The real storm is coming. The cabin felt split in two. On one side, the awkward silence of the crew. On the other, the rising undercurrent of passengers awakening to what was unfolding. Naomi Carter remained standing, not rushing to sit down in seat 2A. She looked directly at Captain Richard Hayes, her voice calm but each word weighted with steel. "Captain, I do not need special treatment. I only want procedure to be followed correctly. I purchased a first-class ticket. I hold a valid boarding pass, yet I was stopped because of how I look. If you truly want to make this right, begin by filing an incident report here and now." Security Officer Jordan Pierce immediately nodded. His tablet was already open, the empty fields of the report glowing on the screen. He spoke clearly, like an oath. "I will document everything. Names of staff, the time, the words and actions. This will be official evidence." Naomi's eyes softened slightly. Good, because too many times, Incidents like this vanish into the dark simply because there is no record. Lauren Price, the flight attendant who had first blocked Naomi, went pale. She blurted out in desperation, "No one here intended to discriminate. We were only following procedure." A voice rang from the back of the cabin, sharp as a gavel. Evelyn Grant struck her cane against the floor once more, her eyes like blades. "Do not hide behind excuses. I heard you clearly. Premium economy is in the back." That tone, that emphasis, I have heard it my entire life. It was not procedure. It was contempt. The accusation left Lauren speechless, sweat beading on her forehead, no defense left to grasp. Meanwhile, Sofia Alvarez's phone buzzed relentlessly. Viewers on her live stream had surged past 2,000. Comments poured in, furious and electrified. "This is their CEO. Keep recording. Don't stop. Justice is streaming live." Sofia bit her lip, hands trembling. But she held the frame steady. She knew this was no longer just a personal moment. It was testimony for the world. Thomas Whitaker, the man who had boasted of his Rolex, now shrank into a shadow. He mumbled, I was told the seat was open. I didn't mean." Naomi turned her gaze on him, her eyes not angry but sharp as an X-ray cutting through pretense. "Perhaps you did not mean to, but you benefited from that prejudice, and you stayed silent until the truth was exposed. That too was a choice." Thomas lowered his head, his trembling hand covering the gold watch, a symbol of arrogance now stripped bare. Captain Richard Hayes frowned. He looked at Naomi, then at Rachel Matthews and Paul Bennett. His voice sank, heavy with authority. "Instead of protecting the passenger, you tried to push her out of a rightful seat. Do you understand what you've done?" Rachel tried to reclaim control. "We only wanted to ensure safety." Richard cut her off, his tone sharp. "Do not use the word safety when what you mean is prejudice. I have flown for 30 years. I know the difference between a threat and a humiliation." The cabin froze in silence. Passengers sat motionless. The captain's words had cut apart the mask of procedure Rachel and Lauren clung to. Only then did Naomi slowly sit down in seat 2A. The motion was simple, but it carried the force of a declaration. "This is my seat. I paid for it. And I will sit here." She unlocked her phone again, this time holding the screen directly to the captain. Displayed was a flashing graph. SkyWest's market sentiment index had plummeted 70% in just 30 minutes. Richard narrowed his eyes. Paul Bennett's mouth fell open. Rachel turned white. Naomi lowered her voice, but it carried clearly to those near her. The cost of discrimination is not always just an apology. Sometimes it is $300 million in market value gone in a few hours. The words thundered through the sealed cabin. Passengers stared in shock, while the crew stood nearly paralyzed. Aaron Cole, the journalist, could not resist scribbling. "Dignity, once dismissed, can become the most powerful lever. And today, one woman has turned humiliation into a weapon to shift an entire corporation." He realized this was no longer a travelogue. It was an indictment. Captain Richard exhaled, his voice heavy. "Dr. Carter, I understand. I will contact the company immediately. But you must realize, If this goes public, it will become a crisis. Naomi lifted her head, a cold smile touching her lips. It is already public, Captain, and the only thing that can save this crisis is the truth. The cabin fell silent once more. But this was no longer the suffocating silence of prejudice. It was the silence of a system of power beginning to collapse under the weight of transparency. The first-class cabin trembled under the weight of the numbers Naomi Carter had just announced. $300 million in market value erased. Her words were not only a warning, but a knife driven straight into the heart of the system. Paul Bennett went pale, his hand shaking as he tried to grip the radio, but it slipped as if out of his control. Rachel Matthews sat frozen, her mind spinning. If this information reached headquarters, her career would be over. Lauren Price clung to the last scrap of her pride. Her voice was shrill, trembling yet trying to stay firm. None of us discriminated. This was just an operational mistake. A sharp crack echoed. Evelyn Grant slammed her cane against the floor again. Her aged eyes burned with fire, her voice cutting like a blade. A mistake. I have flown my entire life. I know the difference between a mistake and an insult, and what I heard from your mouth, from your tone, was not a mistake. It was contempt. The cabin rippled with unrest. A few passengers nodded, whispering to one another. A young couple in the row behind exchanged heavy looks. They had seen everything from the start, and they knew the old woman was right. Naomi did not lash out. She simply sat tall, her eyes bright, her posture unyielding. It was her composure, more than any rebuke, that unsettled Lauren. Captain Richard Hayes stood across the aisle, his gaze darting between Naomi and his crew. He had flown thousands of flights, handled countless crises, but he had never seen a passenger transform a cabin into a courtroom like this. His voice carried, heavy but fair. We must record the truth. Denial will only make things worse. And the truth is already too clear. Sofia Alvarez's phone buzzed non-stop. Her live stream had passed 5,000 viewers, climbing every second. Comments flooded in. They're burying themselves in front of the whole world. She's really the CEO. Unreal. This is a lesson for anyone who thinks they can belittle others. Sofia looked at Naomi, her heart racing. What she saw was no longer just a business leader, but a symbol. Into her phone's microphone she whispered, voice shaking, "You are watching a moment that will change the entire airline industry." Thomas Whitaker, the man who had once raised his chin and demanded my seat, now looked like an animal cornered. He tried to find an escape. I was only told the seat was open. I didn't know. Naomi turned, her voice low and calm, but each word struck like stone. You didn't know, or you didn't want to know, because in that moment you chose silence, and silence is also complicity. Thomas had no reply. His face flushed red as he sank into his seat. The Rolex on his wrist, once a symbol of power, now gleamed like a stain of shame. Jordan Pierce kept typing into his tablet, each line another cut through the excuses. He lifted his head, his voice ringing. This report will be sent directly to the Federal Aviation Administration. No detail can be erased. Paul Bennett panicked. Jordan, You can't. This is my duty, Jordan cut in, eyes steady. If you want me to lie, put it in writing and sign your name. Otherwise, do not stop me from doing my job. The passengers erupted in applause. Some whistled. The sound of approval filled the cabin, fueling Jordan and fanning the flames that were consuming the crew's credibility. Naomi leaned back into seat 2A at last, a simple gesture, but regal, like a queen reclaiming her throne. She opened her tablet again, her voice carrying, "Remember this. This is no longer a personal incident. This is a systemic failure, and systemic failure requires a systemic solution." She paused, her gaze sweeping the cabin, then lowered her tone, heavy as iron. "That is why I brought the Meridian Protocol. If SkyWest wants to survive, they must sign it here and now. If not, I will be in front of Congress tomorrow." The cabin shook with shock. Evelyn Grant raised her hand to her mouth, eyes glistening with tears. Sophia shouted into her live stream, "She just issued an ultimatum." Naomi read each clause aloud. 40 hours of anti-bias training every year with mandatory testing. AI systems monitoring customer interactions in real time. Independent civil rights auditors with authority to suspend flights. Public quarterly audits. A $50 million scholarship fund for disadvantaged groups in aviation. Each demand hit like a hammer, rattling the cabin. Passengers sat up straighter, many nodding. A young student whispered, "This is how you change a system, not with an apology." Captain Richard stayed silent for a long moment. Then he looked at Naomi, his voice hoarse but clear. "Perhaps you are right, Dr. Carter. The time for true reform has come." Naomi's gaze locked onto his. "Not perhaps, Captain. Now." The first-class cabin held its breath. Then a burst of applause erupted from the back rows. It spread quickly, rolling forward like thunder. On Sophia's screen, the comment feed exploded. "Now! Now! Now!" Naomi Carter had turned an ordinary flight into a historic tribunal. And now, the whole world was waiting for the final verdict. The airplane cabin had become a silent battlefield, every gaze like a spear aimed at the crew. Naomi Carter sat tall in seat 2A, her hand resting lightly on the tray table as if it were the most natural place for her. And indeed, it was. Sofia Alvarez's phone buzzed non-stop, her screen flashing wildly. 2,000 viewers became 5,000, then 7,000. Comments flooded in. "They picked the wrong person. This needs to be on TV right now. History is streaming live." News outlets began to share the video. Sophia swallowed hard, her hands trembling, but she held her phone steady. She knew she was now the link in the center of a media storm. At that moment, Rachel Matthews's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and went pale. It was a call from the regional office. Her voice broke as she whispered to Paul Bennett. "Headquarters is watching the live stream. They said we must preserve all data." Paul's legs weakened. Regulations he had always brushed aside came back to him. Every incident with elements of discrimination must be reported and preserved as evidence. Jordan Pierce typed a few more lines into his tablet, his voice firm. "I will collect all devices from the involved crew members in accordance with evidence preservation protocol." Lauren Price jumped to her feet, nearly screaming, "You have no authority to do that!" Jordan turned, his eyes sharp as steel. "My authority is to protect the integrity of the investigation, and I will do it." His words rang out like iron, drawing quiet applause from several passengers. Naomi raised an eyebrow, her eyes flashing with faint approval. She pulled up another document on her tablet and turned the screen for those nearby to see. It was an internal email from 3 months earlier, clearly marked. Anti-discrimination training, optional due to scheduling conflicts. Next to it was the electronic signature of Rachel Matthews. Naomi's voice lowered, slicing through the air. "This is not personal error. This is systemic failure. Training was designed to prevent this, and you dismissed it. Today, the consequences are clear." Rachel's face drained of color, her lips trembling, excuses trapped in her throat. Aaron Cole, the journalist, scribbled furiously. What seemed like a minor clash has exposed the iceberg beneath an entire industry. The truth is not in seat 2A. It is in every review later, every time human dignity was brushed aside. He knew every word he wrote would become part of an earthquake. Naomi leaned back slightly, her voice calm but sharp as glass. "You may call this an incident. I call it evidence. And this evidence will not disappear." In the row ahead, Evelyn Grant closed her eyes and nodded slowly. She whispered, just loud enough for Sophia's live stream to catch. "My son wore a uniform to defend justice. He did not sacrifice, so people could be humiliated on this soil." Her words struck like a torch, fueling the outrage of the online audience. Comments exploded. "Respect for Evelyn. She is the witness of a generation." Inside the cabin, power had shifted. The crew, once the enforcers, were now shrinking back. The passengers, once silent observers, had become the jury, and Naomi Carter, with unshakable composure, had become the quiet judge presiding over the trial. Her voice rose again, steady and weighted, pressing into the memory of all. "I do not want hollow apologies. I want reform. If you do not act, I will. And I have the power, the evidence, and the support to make it happen." A young passenger leapt to his feet, clapping. Others joined, applause spreading like fire through the cabin. No one stayed silent any longer. Naomi sat upright, her eyes gleaming. In that moment, no one dared to think she was out of place. The truth was undeniable. It was they who needed to learn how to stand in the right place. The first-class cabin had become a public courtroom, and with every passing minute, the pressure from outside grew heavier. On Sofia Alvarez's phone, the number of viewers surged past 10,000. Comments poured in like a tidal wave, impossible to read fast enough. "What airline is this? Name it." "She's the CEO. They dared to humiliate their own CEO." History is happening, right here in the sky. Sophia felt her heart pound like a drum, but her hands stayed steady, holding the frame on Naomi Carter, sitting with quiet authority in seat 2A, surrounded by a flustered crew, outraged passengers, and a deeply uneasy captain. Naomi leaned toward the tray table, opening her tablet. On the screen, a live financial chart appeared, the red line plunging straight down. Her voice was low, but carried through every row. In 40 minutes, SkyWest's market value has dropped over $300 million. And this is only the beginning. Paul Bennett swallowed hard, sweat beading on his forehead. His voice shook. This will destroy the entire system. Naomi lifted her gaze, eyes sharp as a blade. No. It will not destroy. It will cleanse. Crisis only comes when you choose to cover up instead of change. Captain Richard Hayes gripped the brim of his uniform cap. He understood her words were not aimed at a few employees. They were a verdict against the entire system. His voice came out hoarse. "Mrs. Carter, what do you want from us?" Naomi answered instantly, without hesitation. "I want the truth recorded. I want every piece of evidence preserved. And more than anything, I want a commitment to reform. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now." Murmurs spread through the cabin. A few passengers nodded. Others lifted their phones to capture the moment. Every movement Naomi made was now a message amplified across the world. Rachel Matthews, desperate, blurted out, "We can ban you from flying with this airline." The cabin froze. But Naomi only smiled, the calm smile of someone who held all the power. "I'm afraid, Ms. Matthews, you won't have that authority much longer." Rachel's face went white, her knuckles pale as she clenched her fists. Jordan Pierce typed the final line into the incident report, then raised his head, his voice ringing like a bell. "The report is complete. I officially confirm. Boarding pass valid. Passenger unjustly obstructed. Discriminatory conduct present. This report will be sent directly to the Federal Aviation Administration." The sound was like a final verdict. There was no room left for excuses. Evelyn Grant pushed herself upright with her cane, her voice breaking like thunder. "Enough. I've waited my whole life to hear these words. For too long, we stayed silent. Today, no one can pretend not to see." Applause exploded, first from the back row, then spreading through the entire cabin. Passengers were no longer mere witnesses. They had become a jury, collectively affirming the judgment. Naomi's phone lit up. The name Alexis Chen, chairwoman of Meridian's board, glowing on the screen. She pressed it to her ear, her voice firm and steady. "Yes, I'm on the flight. The investors have seen everything. We will issue a statement as soon as we land." She hung up, turning to Paul, Rachel, and Lauren. "You have 24 hours. Either sign the Meridian Protocol, a full reform package I have prepared, or I will stand before Congress tomorrow morning and recount everything." The cabin erupted. Passengers gasped, and Sophia nearly shouted into her live stream, "She just delivered an ultimatum." Naomi listed the 5 points of the protocol, her voice echoing like an oath. 40 hours of bias training per year, with tests and certification. AI monitoring of customer interactions in real time, flagging favoritism. An independent civil rights inspector with authority to ground flights. Quarterly audits by a third party, results made public. A $50 million scholarship fund for underrepresented groups in aviation. Each point landed like thunder, shaking the cabin. Passengers looked at one another, shocked yet glowing with hope. Captain Richard Hayes looked at Naomi for a long time. He knew this moment did not just decide the airline's reputation. It could change the entire industry. His voice was hoarse but firm. Perhaps it is time for real change. Naomi sat upright, her eyes gleaming like steel. Not perhaps, Captain. Now. Right here. The cabin fell silent. Then applause roared again, like rolling thunder. Thousands of viewers on the live stream flooded the chat, their comments filling the screen. Now, now, now! Naomi Carter had turned the first-class cabin into a parliament chamber, and the entire world was waiting for the answer. Applause still thundered through the cabin, like a relentless soundtrack, forcing the crew to face the truth. Captain Richard Hayes drew a long breath and slowly stepped toward Naomi Carter. He no longer carried the air of a detached commander, but stood instead as a representative of an entire system, bowing before an undeniable verdict. "Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice low and clear, "on behalf of this flight, I accept the terms of the Meridian Protocol." The cabin erupted. Evelyn Grant burst into tears, her cane trembling as it struck the floor like a victory bell. Sofia Alvarez nearly shouted into her live stream, "They signed! They signed right here on the plane!" The comment feed exploded, filled with thousands of virtual cheers that carried real weight. Naomi gave a slight nod, but she did not stop. She turned, her eyes sweeping over Lauren Price, Rachel Matthews, Paul Bennett, and Thomas Whitaker. Her voice rang out, not angry, but sharp as steel. Systemic reform is one thing, but individuals must also be held accountable for their choices. The air froze. Lauren let out a faint sob. Rachel lowered her head. Paul pressed his lips together, sweat streaming down his face. And Thomas, he sat rigid, eyes darting away like a man who already knew his fate. Naomi lifted her tablet, opening a list of decisions already drafted. Lauren Price, contract terminated, effective immediately. Rachel Matthews, suspended with mandatory retraining. Paul Bennett, demoted to ground operations. Thomas Whitaker, placed on a watch list, restricted from booking first class in the future. "This is not revenge," Naomi said, her voice resonant and steady. "This is consequence, to ensure no one else has to endure what I just endured." For a moment, the cabin was so silent you could hear hearts beating. Then suddenly, applause broke out. From Evelyn Grant. She stood tall, tears shining in her eyes. "My son gave his life defending justice. Today I have seen justice live again. Justice." The entire cabin erupted. Some clapped, some wept. Others raised their phones to record. A rare unity surged through a commercial flight, all centered around one woman who had turned humiliation into justice. Naomi rose, her gaze softening. She extended her hand to Captain Richard Hayes. He clasped it firmly. In that handshake was not just reconciliation between a passenger and a crew, but a covenant between justice and the system. "Thank you for making the right choice," Naomi whispered. Richard replied, his voice breaking, "Thank you for not walking away." In the back row, Aaron Cole, the journalist, had almost forgotten to take notes. He sat frozen, watching the entire scene unfold. Inside him rose a feeling hard to name. The awe of witnessing history, combined with the weight of a profound lesson. Justice does not always shout. Sometimes it only needs to sit upright, steady, and let the truth shine on its own. Naomi settled back into seat 2A. She typed a few final lines into her tablet, then turned to Sophia, who was still live streaming, and spoke softly yet firmly. Remember this. When they tell you to know your place, answer, "Yes, my place is the seat I paid for, the seat I earned." And if they don't understand, make them learn again. Applause swelled once more. The live stream surged past 20,000 viewers, the screen flooded with comments, respect, justice, Meridian Protocol now. First Class was no longer a sealed chamber of luxury. It had become a podium, a courtroom, a torch lighting up an entire industry. And Naomi Carter, the woman once stopped at the doorway, now sat in her rightful seat, steady and unshakable, a living testament that dignity is never up for negotiation. Some flights land in peace, and others leave a mark like a scar etched deep into history. The journey on Sky West that day was not simply about a wrong seat. It was a lesson in the power of composure, of knowing your worth, and of never allowing anyone to deny it. Naomi Carter did not need to shout. She did not need to struggle. She used only truth, evidence, and the quiet authority within her to force an entire system to bow its head. And it was that very resolve that transformed the first-class cabin into a public courtroom, where justice was no longer hidden in books or courtrooms, but stood right before the eyes of dozens of passengers and tens of thousands watching online. The question for you, the one following this story, is this. If one day you are stopped at the path that rightfully belongs to you, what will you do? Will you step back in silence? Or will you stand tall and let the world know that you deserve the seat you paid for with both your effort and your dignity? Leave a comment with the word dignity along with the city you live in, so together we can affirm that human dignity is something that can never be bargained away. And do not forget to subscribe to this channel to continue drawing strength from stories where justice always finds its own flight path. Because sometimes one person's courage to stand up is enough to make the whole world stop and reflect.